The New Zealand wine industry is dominated by Sauvignon Blanc, but recently focus has turned to Pinot Noir. It's a variety that produces a range of styles of wine. A 5-year program is underway at the New Zealand Wine Growers Research Centre in Marlborough. Funded by the Ministry for Business, Innovation and Employment, the goal is to understand what makes a top quality Pinot Noir and how to produce it consistently.
Pinot Noir is quite genetically unstable, so that's why we have a lot of different clones, we have a lot of diversity. So even within vineyards we have a huge amount of diversity, so that there becomes challenging in itself. So not only do you have the differences in the vineyard, but you also have the differences within the clones as well. So it does get very technical. With Pinot Noir, you tend to have a lot more sort of room to play. So each different ferment can be made in a different way. You can use wild yeast, you can use wild yeast from the vineyards, and different temperatures within fermentation, different oak treatments. So there's a lot more you can play with. So you have a lot more control as well. And so it's a lot more technical. So I guess very interesting at the same time.
Which clones are you starting with?
We're going to start with the clone 6, which is right down the end there. And it just seems to be a little bit riper block and handles picking a bit earlier. Being part of this project is pretty amazing. For us, with Claven, we have drilled into it and have really looked into the finer details of quality and quantity for a number of years, but we want to take that to the next level from a more analytical background and really dive into what quality means to us and how far we can push this vineyard.
We want to do some cross-clonal bunch sampling to compare bunch shapes across clones. So.
Yeah. Definitely a set of tools would be nice, so that we could look at growing degree days, we could look at soil temperatures and understand what this year was going to be like, and then, then look at cropping levels from there and be confident that the cropping levels or what we were doing in the vineyard was the best that we could possibly do for that season.
The Pinot Noir program is just getting off the ground, so this is kind of our first few weeks of real research activity. And for the moment, we're essentially tagging and marking vines in the vineyard, bringing in grape samples here and doing some analytical work on the grapes, making small batch wines from those grapes, and again, doing analytical work on the wines that we produce.
The brick solutions.
One of the ideas we have is that there's a relationship between the shape of the bunch, the size of the bunch and berry size, and wine style and composition. And we see even within the same clone of Pinot Noir, it can produce a wide range of bunch shapes and sizes. And we're interested in understanding, is there a relationship between that size and shape and style of wine and quality? For example, we've got here a bunch that has a range of berry sizes in it, some very small, some quite big, and it's relatively open. And so, the rachis or the central stalk is long relative to the number of berries that are on that bunch. Whereas here, we've got a very, very tight, compact bunch with a lot more berries in sort of a similar sort of distance. We also know that bunches tend to throw shoulders, and these shoulders can be quite late developing, so they're a lot less ripe than the main part of the bunch. So lots of things for us to look at quite a fine scale. Essentially, this program is about trying to understand what is quality in Pinot Noir, and both from an expert consumer, but also more a novice or everyday consumer. What do they perceive as quality in Pinot Noir, and how do we go about delivering that consistently, with, economic efficiency? Pinot Noir is a really challenging variety internationally. I think most producers would recognise that it's a difficult variety to grow, but that has its rewards insofar as that difficulty always also translates into kind of quite unique site expression. So where it's grown and how it's grown really influences the style of wine that's made. And this program is really about trying to unravel that to some extent and understand how we go about producing a certain style of Pinot Noir in a certain environment. The top echelon of New Zealand Pinot Noir producers are on the world stage. They are internationally recognised and they make great Pinot Noir. But I think, being New Zealanders, we also want to see if there's opportunity to do things a bit differently. So viticulturally, what we're looking to try and understand is, what does an ideal vine look like to produce a certain style of Pinot Noir? And then once we understand that, the winemakers can choose or not to head in that direction for the style of wine they're making. And then at the same time, the program will be looking at the downstream winemaking and, you know, once we have that vine, what's the best way to make the wine? Here's a good example of what we find in Pinot Noir. This vine here is quite a strong vine. It's got quite a big trunk. It's what we would call kind of high capacity. So it's producing quite a lot of leaf, quite vigorous shoots, and a fairly decent crop load on that vine. So that's, yeah, a high capacity vine. And the one next to it is much lower capacity. So it has a narrower trunk, much more open canopy, much lower leaf area. And that's, I guess, part of what we're trying to test in terms of, well, which type of vine gives us what type of product? You know, what style of wine do these vines make? There is a lot to learn, and we will by no means, you know, learn everything. But even small incremental gains through the program, I'm sure will benefit the industry.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.